Every so often I'll premiere a video on this platform, and after that video is over, or before it's over, I drop a link for my Discord server so that we can all hop into a chat room and voice chat with each other about whatever you guys want to talk about. And a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, sometimes it gets heated, okay? And this is an example of one of those times where you're gonna see this in a second. But in this particular conversation, there's a gentleman named Juan, and he's an older gentleman, and he's a statist. Now you gotta remember, in society, there are only two kinds of people. There's statists who believe that certain people have the moral right to rule others, and those others have the moral obligation to obey those rulers or be punished. That's statism or authoritarianism, or the belief in government. The belief that somebody somewhere, somehow, has a higher claim over your life and property than you. Do you believe that? If you don't believe that, then that's good, because you're not believing lies. It's a lie that somebody else somewhere has a higher claim over your life and property than you. That it's okay for them to initiate unjust force and violence on you because they broke some rule that was penned by a politician somewhere in the halls of government. If you don't believe that, that's good, because you're on the side of truth. You're on the side of honesty. You're on the side of integrity. You're walking in the light. But if you do believe that somebody has a higher claim over your life and property than you, then you're believing against natural law. You're believing against morality, and you're actually believing for immorality. You're in the corner of immorality. On the other side of statism or authoritarianism, or the belief in government, is voluntarism or anarchy, or the belief that there are no legitimate rulers, that nobody has a higher claim over your life and property than you, that nobody can legitimately claim the moral right to rule you, and you do not have the moral obligation to obey them. That's anarchy. Anarchy is not chaos. It's not throwing Molotov cocktails while windows are broken in the background and cars are burning in the streets. Anarchy simply means without rulers. It means no rulers. Nobody has the right to rule me. I rule myself. I govern myself. And then that brings us to the term government. Government etymologically literally means, it comes from two Latin words, governo and mentis. Governo means to control or to govern, and mentis means the mind. It means to control the mind, or mind control. Somebody has the legitimate right to control you. If you're being controlled against your will and you can do nothing, you're powerless to get yourself out of that position, you are a slave. If you are an authoritarian, if you believe in government, you believe somebody has the right to rule you, and you have the moral obligation to obey them, and if you don't obey them, you are rightly punished. It's basically you're committing a sin against the state. The state is the church. You are the sinner. You broke their rules. You broke their commandments, and now you stand against the state, which makes you a sinner and worthy of punishment. Do you believe that? It's wrong-headed to believe that. It's an error. It's against truth. It's against natural law. See, man-made law is always against natural law. Always. Lies are always against truth. Darkness is always against light. And we need to understand that. We need to realize that. And that's the basis of this conversation. So Juan is trying to argue that, yeah, if you don't pay your car registration, then those cops have the moral right to force you over against your will. And they have the moral right to give you a ticket. In other words, it's a fine. They have the moral right to extort you. You can call it whatever you want to. You can use whatever euphemism you want to use to make you feel better, but it's still extortion. Getting a ticket by a cop is extortion. It's paying a fine or being made, it's stealing from somebody with a threat, the implied threat of force. If you don't pay that fine, then you get fined some more. If you continue to not pay the fine of the state, they don't just let you walk free. If you, quote, evade taxes, you're a tax evader. You're an evil person in the eyes of the state because you wanted to keep 100% of what you own or what you worked for. We, the government, this is the government's perspective, we, the government, have the moral right to take 10%, 20%, 33%, 35%, 53% of your income because we say so. That's immoral. If you take something from somebody without the owner of that something's consent, then you have committed what's called theft, and theft is immoral. If you put a gun to their head and say, give me what you've got, or you will be punished, or I'll pull the trigger, or I'll throw you into a cage, that's called extortion. I don't care who does it. I don't care what reason they do it. I don't care if they have a badge, a uniform, and a gun. I don't care if they come with credentials and the authority of the state. What they've done is stolen from you. They've committed extortion against you. They've done that which is immoral, and no euphemism can wipe that truth away. So with that as the foundation, here's our conversation with Juan. It's a little lengthy, but it is very interesting because it lets you into the mind, the cognitive dissonant mind of a statist, an authoritarian, one who believes that you gotta follow the rules of government or else. And if they apply those rules and punish you, they throw you into a cage or they extort your money, it's right because they're government. Guys, we need to turn our minds on. We need to stop being sleepwalking through life, and we need to get down to reality. And if you disagree with this, at all, leave your disagreement in the comment section below. We're reasonable people. I'm a reasonable person. What is your logic-based, non-emotion driven argument against the simple statement of, I don't believe anyone has the right to initiate unjust force and violence against you for having done nothing but break the laws of politicians. And remember, the laws of politicians are nothing more and nothing less than the opinions, those opinions of man backed by the threat of force. Every single ticket, every single fine, every single law is backed by the threat of force. If you don't pay this fine, if you don't obey this law, we're going to throw your ass in a cage and fine you and extort you. So here's that conversation. This comes from my Discord server. I'm going to leave the Discord server link in the description below. Hey, sign up, guys. We have some really, really good conversations. And like I said, almost every video that I premiere, not upload, but premiere. When I premiere it, I leave the link to the Discord chat, and we can all jump in there and we can all talk and have a good discussion. So leave your comments about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the comments section below. Enjoy the video.
For statism. That is not a defense for taxation. That's just saying, oh, you found a way to free yourself from these restraints, or from this slavery in many different ways.
Actually, it's not learning to free yourself from slavery. It's learning to be comfortable in your slavery, because the things I keep hearing you say, Juan, is, oh, the very little taxes I pay, or I'm okay with this, or I receive value from that. Those are all irrelevant. The bottom line is you don't have a choice. It may make you feel okay to say, well, I don't mind paying this, or I don't mind paying that, or I get value out of this. Or it's just very little taxation over here. The bottom line is you cannot opt out. You are not the captain of your own vessel in that. And that shows that all your words are saying is, I'm a slave, but I'm a happy slave because I'm a slave who gets value. I don't have an option, but I kind of like it, which doesn't erase the fact that you're still a slave.
Yes, it does. Your emotional rant notwithstanding. What I'm saying is I couldn't personally build a road to the city. So the convenience of it is the administrators where I live didn't build the road way before I was born. So I don't mind paying to use that road. Paying to use what I use. You can call it taxes, I'll call it taxes. I just call it paying the bill for what I use.
But you're not. But see, you're using euphemisms, and I don't see the emotion that I just used. I was basically using your words because you're trying to make us you're trying to get us convinced that you're a happy slave, and I'm pretty convinced you are a happy slave, but you're a slave nonetheless. But you're saying you're paying for the roads. That's a euphemism. You're being extorted for those roads. You have to pay for those roads because that's how they built it into your county taxes. But you're still a slave, and that's back to Rika's point. Statism is slavery, and you've actually solidified the point that she originally made.
Well, that's your characterization, but I totally disagree with it.
Then can you opt out? Can you opt out of paying for your road taxes?
Sure.
You can?
I'd like to do is get an electric vehicle.
That knocks out some taxes, not all taxes.
He was talking about the road taxes.
Property tax doesn't go to
tax.
Well, I'm pretty sure Gadsden Viper posted something about how the state was already working on how to tax electronic cars for not using gas.
Does property taxes in your guys' states go to roads? I don't thought that was gas tax.
So they don't go to the roads. The property tax doesn't.
Yeah, so property taxes go to like schools, libraries, firefighters.
In my area, for me, it goes to having a guy come grade my road, my access road, 2 or 3 times a year. Which, if you ever saw it, you'd know that I'm getting a hell of a deal.
Right, but the deal it's irrelevant to what we're really talking about. It doesn't matter what kind of deal you're getting. The question is, can you opt out without harm coming to you? In any of these instances.
And the
I just gave you an example of opting out of the gas tax. I gave you an example of how you opt out of the gas tax. You get an electric vehicle. You're avoiding.
No. Wait. You just said it again. You just made another excuse for the slavery that you're involved in, because in order for you to opt out, you have to do something very difficult that a lot of people can't afford, and that's get an electric vehicle. So in order for you to opt out of that force, that extortion, that thing that makes you happy, that graded road, you have to do something extraordinary. Like you have to exert a lot of effort. You can't just go, hey, I opt out, guys. Oh, you got to get an electric vehicle? They're actually forcing you into that hole. Go ahead, Cannibal. You've been wanting to talk. Go ahead.
Well, just to go off on your point, even if you did opt out by getting an electric vehicle, you would still be forced to register that vehicle with the state, which kind of nullifies the point in the first place. I'll let you respond to that before I continue.
Now, as far as the registering the vehicle, I'm okay with that, because then it gives them something to locate if it's stolen. I figure that's value to me, or easier to find, or maybe they're used in a crime. So
Oh, see, now you're moving the goalpost.
You other examples of what the registration.
I didn't ask for other examples.
They all come with a VIN anyways.
Hold on, Rika. So, Juan, what if I didn't find value in the security that they could find my car if it's stolen? What if I see that I can protect my vehicle myself, and I don't see the same value as you do? Would you agree that if I didn't want to pay that and believe that that was worth the value, that I shouldn't have to without force being applied?
No, I would say that's entirely up to you, what you decide to do.
But
Why are you asking me about your situation? I'm talking about my situation.
I'm asking. I'm agreeing with your situation, but what if I don't see the same value that you do in taxes? Would you agree that I would be forced to pay them, or could I not pay them and no force be applied?
I have no idea what would happen to you. I don't know where you live. I don't know your situation. I only know what my situation is. I don't look at other people's and try to give them answers about how their life happens or what happens to them. I purposely designed my life starting 50 years ago to be at this point.
You would agree, though.
And you don't. If you haven't, and you don't like the way you have to live within the society you're within, I don't have an answer for you. I took action.
Okay, so can you agree that not just my situation, but a majority of situations, that if a police officer sees a tag or a car without a tag, that he will stop you? Can you agree with that reality?
Well, I would probably assume they would, yeah.
So then you would agree that when they stop you, they are enforcing some written rule upon you. Can you agree with that?
Well, they're certainly investigating. There isn't one. Was the vehicle stolen and the tag taken off? Was it just involved in a hit and run where it killed somebody and they took the tag off? I don't know. But it's an investigating process. And yeah, there are.
Whether or not the tag is taken off or not is irrelevant. If they see a car without a tag, they will stop you. And would you agree that they are applying a written rule to you if they stop that car?
Well, they're investigating to see if a rule has been broken. In rules, not rulers, but I believe in rules.
So you can agree that they're enforcing rules.
I'm saying they're investigating whether a rule has been broken. Maybe the screws on the tag fell off, and they got in the car. I don't know. You know, that he doesn't know either. He's investigating to find out.
Okay, so what if the answer when the cop pulls him over is, well, officer, the reason I don't have a tag is because I don't register my vehicles. What will happen to him?
More than likely, he'll be given a ticket, a citation, and saying you've broke this rule, and you have an opportunity to either make a case of wasn't broken. Yeah, I know there's a rule, and I wasn't following it.
If I don't pull over, what happens to me then?
I have no idea. What am I, a fortune teller?
Come on. You know what happens if you don't pull over when a cop's behind you? What happens? They're not going to... Huh?
They find a way to investigate.
No, give me a break. No.
You got to be honest. Come on. What happens to you if you do not pull over when a cop's trying to get you to pull over?
They will follow you until they can get you pulled over, or till you run out of gas, or till you wreck.
And then do what to you? What happens when you stop?
Investigation. And then whatever the investigation unfolds.
No, ultimately that's what they should do. What they actually do is they chase people down like crazy. And it's nuts because they're putting more people in danger by doing that than just letting them go and be like, okay, we'll run the plates later.
He didn't have a plate.
Okay, they'll run the description of the car later.
But Juan, the whole point is, and I think what Cannibal's getting at is here, it doesn't matter if it's a jaywalking ticket or if you didn't pay your registration or you didn't pull over for the cops. Force is about to be applied against you, against your will, for having done nothing wrong. If that is not a picture of slavery, there is no such thing as slavery.
Breaking a rule of society is not violence to me. I'm sorry.
A rule of government is not society. Why you keep equating government with society is beyond me. They're not the same thing.
Are there facts to prove that these rules even apply to me in the first place?
That was the next question. That's a great question right there.
Oh, that's a political philosophy question.
Was that a yes or a no? Or just another dodge?
No, it's an explanation.
Okay, so let me just ask you this one. Is it ever right to initiate force and violence against someone who is not harmed or threatened to harm another person?
Well, harm can be interpreted many different ways. Unnecessarily endangering the public at large, I consider harm.
Okay, how about driving down the road without a tag? You're driving the speed limit, the posted sign, the government sign on the side of the road. You're doing 33 and a 35. You just don't want to pay your registration. You're not harming. You're not threatening to harm anybody, but you broke that rule of society.
Hold on, what do you mean by threaten to harm society? Like, clarify that term right there. What harm do you, what do you define as harm or potential harm?
Endangerment, unnecessary endangerment by an actions of another that unnecessarily endangers the well-being of another's person or property is harm.
So are you okay with someone, a badged, uniformed, gun-wearing man, writing a ticket, which implies a fine, which is also extortion, taking money, threatening to take money from someone who only didn't pay the registration? Are you okay with that?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. And I watch a lot of this live PD, and there's many times that they pull people over or that have an expired license, and they're breaking the rules of the road. And rules, and I have a problem with some asshole who drives his car on the public roads and totally ignores the rules of the road. But I don't see all this violence that you're talking about every single time that something happens, as we've been describing.
Okay, you didn't answer my question. Are you okay with someone getting extorted, which is theft by threats of force, Are you okay with someone getting extorted, and if they don't pay the extortion fee, they lose all their freedoms and get thrown into a cage because they did not want to pay the registration? Are you okay with that?
No, that's an emotional extreme. I don't see that happening. I haven't seen that happen. I'm sure it does happen.
Let's just say it does happen. Are you okay with that happening?
I'm okay with somebody who is breaking a rule. I'm okay with that. Now, if they want to escalate it beyond, okay, I broke the rule, I shouldn't have broken the rule, I fess up, I'll man up, and I'll take responsibility for my actions.
Actually, these rules apply.
I don't actually understand why you're not being forthright with a very straightforward question. Are you okay with a person being extorted, that's threatened with theft by force, and possibly caged if they don't pay their registration for their vehicle?
Don't consider it extortion.
Yes,
I don't think anybody who has no registration is going to be thrown in a cage. I've never seen that happen. It's not a cageable offense.
It is a cageable offense, because if you continue to not pay the fine of the state, they don't let you get away with that. If you continue to not pay taxes, you get thrown into a cage for tax evasion, let alone for not paying your registration. So I don't understand why you're being honest with the answer.
In some states, you actually can be arrested for driving with an unregistered vehicle.
Let me just give you a personal example. 6 months ago, I was driving, minding my own business, way under the speed limit, driving very carefully, because I always do. And it's 12 o'clock at night. I just got off of work. A cop goes out of his way, makes a U-turn, follows me. He impounds my vehicle because my registration is not up to date. It cost me $240.40 to get it out. If I don't pay the extortion money, and that's exactly what it is, I don't get my car back. They literally stole my property from me for having done nothing wrong. I didn't harm someone. I didn't threaten to harm them, but they stole my property. Taking property from somebody else without their consent is theft. Are you okay with that, Juan?
Broke a rule, and you got corrected for it.
Dude!
You should have kept your registration up as a non-retarded adult. You know those things are required.
The answer is yes. You're okay with my property being stolen from me against my will because I broke that societal rule. You're okay with that rule, right, Juan?
I'm okay with, if you break a rule, to have a consequence for it. Yes, I'm okay with that.
Well, the bottom line then, Juan, is that you're okay with statism, which is slavery. And that's utter slavery for a man, regardless of the arbitrary rule, to take property from another man without his consent. You're saying that's slavery, and you're okay with slavery.
Oh, I'm saying you give implied consent when you go out on the public roads. You give implied consent that you are going to follow the rules of the road.
Says who?
Who made the rules? And that you said it was required. So where was for the requirement?
That's a good question.
Okay, so back to the question. What implied consent is given?
Implied consent happens when you leave your driveway and hit the public roads. That you are implying that you consent to the rules of those public roads.
So here's the problem. Wow. Juan, here's the issue with that, though. It's kind of the same thing as the argument of if you don't like it, leave. I mean, look, the modes of transportation are monopolized. I've had this conversation with you, and you try to dodge this all the time, and it really bothers me. The roads are our main way of traveling. They were put here without our consent. Most of us were born into it. I know you were born at a time where not everything was as developed as it is now. But if I mean, would you agree that I have a right to travel?
Yes, of course.
Okay, you agree I have a right to travel. If I have a right to travel, then why am I compulsed into, let alone following rules, having to pay into these things? I mean, shit, I kind of messed up my argument a little bit. My bad. The point I'm trying to make is it's not like we're actually given a choice to go on the roads or not. So it's kind of the same argument like before when you would say if you don't like it, leave. I could say the same thing about an abusive relationship. You know, just because someone is in a place does not mean they consent to what's being done to them. It's just not a valid argument. Otherwise, unless you want to say that, you know, an abusive relationship is okay just because the other person doesn't leave. You know, it's the same situation.
Okay, back to travel, and let's get rid of the abused wife. Back to travel. There's a lot of people in cities, and I've seen them, and I'm sure you've seen them, that don't own cars. Stop, and they get on a bus, and they travel to wherever they want to go. There are ways that you can travel that you are not personally using public roads.
If we give implied consent to obey these rules, where does the government get the authority to tell us that we have to partake with these rules?
We give the authority to them which we don't have.
Philosophy question that has been debated for thousands of years. It's where does the government get its authority? And it boils down to they have overwhelming power.
So that was
could it be because I'll just quickly put this in. Could it be because the majority follow government? Therefore, there's its overwhelming power. Most people work for government.
Okay, so, Juan, you said that because they have overwhelming power. So because they have force, we're obligated to follow their rules. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're not obligated, but there's consequences if you don't.
I don't think anyone's gonna argue against that. There's physical consequences in the status quo for rejecting that philosophy. But I mean, what you're basically saying is might equals right. Not necessarily that it's morally right, but you're saying that that's just how it is. What's the powerful will control the weaker than it. I know that's a very weird way to word it. But here's the issue with that. If you follow that down a logical path, that would justify any rape, theft, murder, etc. And so it's inconsistent to even use that as an argument.
Well, I consider that a philosophy, but, you know, that's just me.
Well, those are situations. If you're successful at raping someone, you're successful. You successfully overpowered that person. And you just said it's because governments have basically the physical force, the power to make and enforce laws. I'd say they're pretty shitty at it, but at the same time, they are a large militaristic force. So how is that a false equivalence?
Not that long ago, slavery was very real, and people who said it was okay took over the people who said it wasn't. So what's the difference now?
There is no difference. Slavery still exists. We are all slaves.
Slavery does still exist. It's slavery by proxy. They enslave us via the economic structure that's laid out. Money, wealth.
Right.
And
Right, yeah.
You had people that were saying the same arguments that it's moral and just because, look, you know, how else are we going to get all this cotton done?
And that's actually part of the reasons why roads are part of the slavery.